Flora rubbed her stomach. Papa, I'm hungry. Stanley swallowed hard. 50 naira. That was all he had left. Go to Mama Sheila's shop, he whispered. Share it with your brother and sister. Outside, a girl laughed cruelly. Tell your poor father to get real work. Stanley's jaw tightened. He could buy the whole shop with a single phone call, but he said nothing, just held Flora's small hand, squeezing it tight. One day they will know, he whispered. One day. The other two children, Jaden and Little Favor, watched quietly. They didn't fully understand, but they trusted their father. Nobody knew his secret. Nobody knew that Stanley Obi, the poor carpenter they mocked, owned half of Lagos. Nobody knew his name was on the board of Meridian Holdings, one of Nigeria's biggest companies. 3 years ago, his world had fallen apart. Sonia, his beautiful, educated wife, had walked out on him and their newborn triplets. She left a note on the hospital bed. I didn't sign up to be a mother of 3 at once. I'm too young for this life. The betrayal had broken him. He'd realized wealth had attracted the wrong women. So, he vanished, disappeared, and raised his children as a poor man. Only his older brother, Thompson, knew the truth. Flora returned from the shop, clutching half a loaf of bread, tears in her eyes. Papa, the money is not enough. Mama Sheila's daughter Tracy laughed. Always buying half bread, half milk. Poverty na disease. Stanley clenched his fists, swallowing the urge to yell. He could have ended this insult in an instant. But instead, he whispered softly, Don't mind them, my daughter. One day, they'll know. The other two children, Jaden and Little Favor, watched quietly. They didn't fully understand, but they trusted their father. That night, as the triplets cried themselves to sleep, Stanley stared at the ceiling. Had he made the right choice? Would anyone ever love him or his children for who they were? And most importantly, would his secret ever stay hidden? Before we continue, subscribe, drop a comment, and tell us where you're watching from. You won't believe what happens next. Morning came with its usual troubles. Stanley was preparing to leave for the construction site when he heard shouting outside. Thief! Thief! Help! He rushed out to find a young woman surrounded by a group of angry area boys. Her bag was torn, her clothes dusty from being pushed around. Please, I'm not a thief, she cried. I'm just looking for someone. The leader, a rough boy called Bola, grabbed her arm. You've been walking around here since yesterday, asking questions. You're a spy. Let her go. Stanley's voice cut through the noise like a knife. Bola turned, his eyes full of disrespect. Papa Triplet, go inside. This is not your business. Stanley didn't move. I said, let her go. Something in his tone made Bola release her. The woman stumbled forward and Stanley caught her. For a moment, their eyes met and his heart stopped. She looked exactly like Sonia. Same face structure, same complexion. But her eyes were different, softer, kinder. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Who are you looking for? Stanley asked. She hesitated, then pulled out a worn photograph. These children, triplets. I was told they lived somewhere in this area with their father. Stanley's blood ran cold. In the photograph were Jaden, Flora, and Favor taking the day they were born. Where did you get this? His voice shook. It's complicated, she said. My name is Sheila. Please, I need to find these children. It's a matter of life and death. Before Stanley could respond, Flora ran out of the house. She stopped when she saw Sheila, her small mouth falling open. Mama? Flora whispered. No, baby, Stanley said quickly. This is not your mama. But Flora wouldn't stop staring. Neither would Jaden and Little Favor, who had followed their sister outside. Sheila knelt down, tears streaming down her face. You are so beautiful, she whispered to the children. All 3 of you. Who are you, and why do you have their picture? Sheila stood up slowly, wiping her tears. Because, she said, her voice breaking, I'm their mother's twin sister, and I've been searching for them since the day Sonia abandoned them. The street went silent. Even the traders stopped their hawking to listen. Sonia has a twin? Stanley could barely breathe. Had, Sheila corrected, fresh tears falling. Sonia died 6 months ago. Car accident in Abuja. Before she died, she confessed everything to me. How she abandoned her husband and babies, how she was ashamed but too proud to return. She made me promise to find you all, to help take care of her children, to ask for forgiveness she can no longer ask for herself. Stanley felt his legs weaken. Sonia was dead. The woman he loved and hated for 3 years was gone. I don't have much, Sheila continued. I'm just a nurse. I work at a clinic in Surulere. But whatever I have, I want to help. Please, those children are my blood too. Mama Sheila chose that moment to appear, her loud voice shattering the emotion. Another poor person, she laughed. Stanley, you and your family will die in poverty. Now you have found another hungry mouth to feed. Her daughter Tracy joined in. 2 poor people together. This one is even worse. She looks like a house help. The other neighbors laughed. Some shook their heads in pity. In their eyes, Stanley and this strange woman were the same, struggling, poor, irrelevant. Stanley looked at Sheila, at her worn shoes and faded dress, at her hands rough from hard work, at her eyes filled with sincere love for children she had just met. And he made a decision. "Come inside," he said quietly. "We need to talk."
For 3 months, Sheila became part of their lives. She would come every evening after her shift at the clinic, bringing whatever she could, bread, a little soup, sometimes just her presence. She sang to the children, helped them with their homework, patched their worn clothes. The triplets loved her. They called her Auntie Shay and would run to the window every evening, waiting for her footsteps. Stanley watched her carefully at first, suspecting ulterior motives. But Sheila never asked for anything. She never complained about the poverty she saw. She simply helped, quietly and genuinely. One evening, after the children had slept, Stanley and Sheila sat outside on the corridor. "Why are you really doing this?" Stanley asked. "You barely knew your sister. You said Sonia left home when you were teenagers." Sheila was quiet for a long moment. "Sonia and I were twins, yes, but we were very different. She wanted money, status, the big life. I just wanted peace and purpose. When our parents died, she took her half of the inheritance and disappeared into Lagos. I used mine to study nursing." She paused, her voice becoming softer. "We didn't speak for years. Then 6 months ago, she called me from the hospital. She was dying, Stanley, and she was full of regret. She told me about you, about the babies she'd abandoned. She said she'd made the worst mistake of her life." "If she regretted it, why didn't she come back?" Stanley's voice was hard. "Pride," Sheila said simply. "And shame. She said she'd tracked you down 2 years ago, found out you had left your big life and were living poor. She thought you'd done it to punish yourself, to understand suffering. She was too ashamed to face you, too ashamed to tell you she'd been living recklessly while you struggled with 3 babies alone." Stanley closed his eyes. "So she sent you instead?" Sheila said, "She asked me to find you, to make sure the children were okay, and if you'd allow it, to help in any way I could." Sheila turned to look at him. "I'm not trying to replace her, Stanley. I'm just trying to right her wrongs." For the first time in 3 years, Stanley felt something crack in his chest. Maybe it was grief, maybe it was healing. He couldn't tell. But Mama Sheila and her daughter Tracy had been watching from a distance. They didn't like this development at all. "That woman is a witch," Tracy told her mother. "She's coming to trap that useless man. We need to scatter their relationship before she settles down in that house." Mama Sheila smiled wickedly. "Don't worry, my daughter. I have a plan." The next day, Tracy approached Sheila at the junction. "Auntie, good evening," she said sweetly, her earlier mockery hidden behind a false smile. "Good evening," Sheila was polite but cautious. "I want to apologize for how I spoke to you before. I didn't know you were a good person. In fact, I want us to be friends. A woman like you, working hard, helping people. I respect that." Sheila relaxed slightly. "Thank you. I appreciate that." "There's a small business opportunity I want to tell you about," Tracy said, moving closer. "My mother knows someone who needs a nurse for a private job. Just 1 week, and they will pay you 50,000 naira. You can use the money to help Stanley and the children." 50,000 naira. Sheila's eyes widened. That was more than 2 months of her salary. "What kind of job?" she asked carefully. "Just taking care of an old woman in Lekki. Very easy," Tracy smiled. "But you have to come tomorrow morning. The family is traveling and they need someone urgently." Sheila hesitated. Something felt wrong, but when she looked at Stanley's house, at the peeling paint, the leaking roof, the children's torn uniforms, she made her decision. "Okay," she said, "I'll come." Tracy smiled wider. "Good, very good." That night, Sheila told Stanley about the opportunity. He frowned. "Sheila, I don't think you should go. Something doesn't feel right." "It's just 1 week," Sheila assured him, "and the money will help so much. I can buy new uniforms for the children, fix your roof before the rains come." "I don't need you to fix my roof," Stanley said quietly. "I need you here, with us, with them." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, something that had been growing slowly over 3 months of shared struggle and quiet companionship. "I'll be back in 1 week," Sheila promised. "I'll be fine." But she wasn't fine. The private job was a trap. The address Tracy gave her led to an uncompleted building in a dangerous part of Lekki. When she arrived, she found herself surrounded by armed men. "Where is the old woman I'm supposed to care for?" she demanded, trying to hide her fear. The leader laughed. "There is no old woman. We were paid to keep you here for 2 weeks. By the time you get out, your little romance with that poor man will be finished." Sheila's phone was seized. Her bag was taken. She was locked in a room with no windows. And back in Ajegunle, Tracy spread a wicked rumor. "That Sheila woman has run away with a rich man. She was just pretending to care about Stanley and those children. I saw her enter a Range Rover with a big man yesterday evening. She is a gold digger." The news spread like wildfire. Neighbors who had started to respect Sheila now shook their heads in disgust. And Stanley, listening to the gossip, felt his heart break all over again. Not again, he whispered. Not again.
For 5 days, Sheila remained trapped in that uncompleted building. She rationed the little food they gave her. She prayed. She thought about the triplets, their innocent faces, their laughter, the way little Favor would hold her hand. Meanwhile, Stanley withdrew into himself. He stopped talking to neighbors. He worked longer hours at the construction site. Anything to avoid thinking about Sheila's betrayal. The triplets cried every night. "Where is Auntie Shay?" Flora would ask. "Why hasn't she come back?" Stanley had no answers. But on the 6th day, something happened. Thompson, Stanley's brother, made one of his rare visits to Ajegule. He came in a regular car, dressed simply, maintaining his brother's disguise. "Stanley, we need to talk," Thompson said urgently. "The board is pressuring you to return. Projects are stalling. Investors are asking questions." "I'm not ready," Stanley said tiredly. "It's been 3 years," Thompson exploded. "How long will you punish yourself? How long will you make your children suffer because of one woman's betrayal?" "You don't understand. Then make me understand. Explain to me why a billionaire is living like this, why your children are mocked in this neighborhood, why you are working for 500 naira a day when you own companies worth billions." Their argument awoke the triplets. Jaden came out, rubbing his eyes. "Uncle Thompson, have you seen Auntie Shay? She hasn't come for 6 days." Thompson frowned. "Who is Auntie Shay?" Stanley explained briefly. About Sheila, about Sonia's twin sister, about the help she'd been giving them. "And you believed she just ran away?" Thompson asked incredulously. "Stanley, you're smarter than this." "What else should I believe? Everyone saw her enter a Range Rover with a man. She left without saying goodbye to the children." Thompson pulled out his phone. "Give me her full name and a description." Within 30 minutes, Thompson's security team had traced Sheila's last known location. Surveillance cameras at the junction had captured everything. Tracy approaching her, the conversation, and then Tracy's brother Bola driving Sheila in a borrowed Range Rover to that uncompleted building in Lekki. "She was kidnapped," Thompson said, his face hard, "and I know exactly who's behind it." The rescue was swift and silent. Thompson's security team surrounded the building. The kidnappers, realizing they'd made a terrible mistake, fled, but Thompson's men caught them all. When Sheila was brought out, dirty and exhausted but unharmed, Stanley was waiting outside. Their eyes met and she burst into tears. "I didn't abandon you," she sobbed. "I didn't abandon them. I would never." Stanley pulled her into his arms. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The triplets ran to her, crying and hugging her legs. Even Thompson, usually so controlled and businesslike, felt his eyes sting. But Stanley's expression changed when Thompson showed him the evidence, when he saw Tracy's face on the surveillance video, when he learnt about the wicked plot. "Take me to Mama Sheila's shop, now," Stanley said quietly. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more emotional African stories. Your support means everything to us. By the time Stanley arrived at the shop, a crowd had gathered. Tracy and her mother stood behind the counter, unaware of what was coming. "Mama Sheila," Stanley said loudly, his voice carrying across the street. "Mama Sheila, you wanted to know who I really am. Today, I'll show you." He pulled out his phone and made one call. Within minutes, 3 sleek cars pulled up, real Range Rovers, not borrowed ones. Men in suits stepped out, and then Thompson emerged, commanding and powerful. "Good evening," Thompson announced to the shocked crowd. "My name is Thompson Obi. Some of you may have heard of Meridian Holdings. My family owns it. And this man you've been mocking, this poor carpenter you've been insulting, this is my younger brother, Stanley Obi, owner of 40% of Meridian Holdings, net worth over 15 billion naira." The street went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Mama Sheila's face turned grey. Tracy started shaking. "For 3 years," Stanley continued, his voice steady and cold, "I've lived among you as a poor man. I wanted to understand real struggle, and I wanted to find real people who would help without expecting anything in return." He pulled Sheila forward gently. "This woman, this nurse who barely earns 30,000 naira a month, she spent her money on my children. She gave her time, her energy, her love. She asked for nothing. While you," he pointed at Mama Sheila and Tracy, "you mocked us, you called us names, you made our children cry. And when you saw someone trying to help us, you kidnapped her. You tried to destroy something good because your hearts are rotten with jealousy and wickedness." Thompson stepped forward with documents. "Mrs. Sheila Adebayo, we've investigated you. This shop, you've been selling expired products, cheating customers with wrong measurements, bribing health inspectors. The police are on their way. Your daughter Tracy, we have evidence of her involvement in the kidnapping. That's a federal offense. Mama Sheila collapsed to her knees. "Please, sir, I didn't know. I'm sorry, please." Tracy was crying hysterically. "We didn't mean it. We were just joking. Please, don't arrest us." But Stanley's face was stone. "You didn't mean it when you called my children poverty children. You didn't mean it when you sold them half bread and laughed at their hunger. You didn't mean it when you locked an innocent woman in an uncompleted building for 6 days." The neighbors who had joined in the mockery now hung their heads in shame. Some tried to slip away quietly. "Let this be a lesson," Stanley addressed the crowd. "You never know who you're mocking. You never know whose story you're laughing at. Today, I could forgive you all and move on, but my children will remember every insult. Sheila will remember every humiliation. And God has already recorded everything." The police arrived. Mama Sheila and Tracy were led away in handcuffs, their loud wails echoing through the streets. And Stanley, finally, took off his mask of poverty.
2 weeks later, Stanley stood on the balcony of his real home, a massive mansion in Ikoyi, overlooking the Lagos Lagoon. The triplets were inside with their new nanny, playing with toys they'd never imagined they could own. But Stanley's eyes were on Sheila, who stood beside him, quiet and overwhelmed. "I don't belong here," she said softly. "This world, this life, it's too much." "You belong wherever my children need you," Stanley replied. "And they need you, Sheila. They love you. As their aunt, as family. But Stanley, I'm not asking you to replace anyone." He turned to face her fully. "Sonia was my wife, the mother of my children. I loved her once, but she's gone. And in 3 months of living simply, of struggling together, you showed me something she never did. You showed me real love, unselfish love, the kind that doesn't ask what it will gain." Sheila's eyes filled with tears. "I was just doing what was right." "Exactly," Stanley smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. "You did what was right when it cost you everything. You spent money you couldn't afford to spend. You gave time you barely had. You loved children who weren't yours. And when you were trapped in that building, you know what kept you strong? My investigators told me you kept telling those kidnappers, 'I need to go back. Those children are waiting for me.' Not the money, not the opportunity. The children." He reached for her hand. "Sheila, I'm not asking you to make any decisions now. I know it's too soon, but I want you to know something. These past 3 months, living in that small room in Ajegunle, struggling with you, raising my children with you, that was the realest I felt since Sonia left, the happiest I felt, because I wasn't doing it alone anymore." Sheila couldn't speak. She could only cry. Behind them, Flora's small voice called out, "Papa, Auntie Shay, come and see what Jaden built with his new blocks." They turned, and all 3 triplets were at the glass door, their faces pressed against it, smiling wider than the Lagos sky. "They're happy," Sheila whispered, "really happy." "Because you're here," Stanley said, "because you chose them when nobody else chose." 6 months passed. The story of the billionaire who pretended to be poor spread across Lagos and beyond. Some people called Stanley crazy, others called him wise, but everyone agreed on one thing: Sheila was special. She continued working as a nurse. She refused to quit, saying her patients needed her. But she moved into a comfortable apartment Stanley provided, close enough to visit the children every day. Slowly, carefully, something beautiful grew between her and Stanley. Not rushed, not forced, but genuine. And then came the day when Stanley took her back to Ajegunle, not to the small room, but to the community. He'd bought Mama Sheila's shop after her arrest and converted it into a free medical clinic. He hired Sheila to run it. "This is for the people who couldn't afford healthcare," Stanley explained at the opening ceremony. The entire neighborhood was present, those who mocked him and those who quietly helped. "I lived among you for 3 years. I saw real poverty. I saw real struggle. I also saw wickedness, and I saw kindness. Today, I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to help. This clinic is free for everyone who needs it because I learned something important. Wealth is not about how much you have. It's about what you do with what you have." He pulled Sheila forward. "And this woman taught me that lesson. She had little but gave everything. So today, I'm announcing the Sheila Obi Foundation." "Sheila Obi?" Sheila whispered, shocked. "Yes, Sheila Obi, because yesterday you agreed to marry me, and when we have our wedding next month, you'll officially become not just my wife, but the mother my children have been praying for." The crowd erupted in applause. Sheila was crying again, but this time they were tears of pure joy. The triplets ran onto the stage, each holding a flower. "Mama Shay," they shouted in unison, "we love you." And Sheila knelt down, gathering all 3 of them in her arms, her heart finally whole. In the crowd, some of the neighbors who had mocked them wept with regret. Others clapped genuinely, happy to witness true love and redemption. And somewhere in heaven, perhaps Sonia smiled, grateful that her sister had corrected her biggest mistake. Never judge people by what you see on the surface. The person you mock today might be the person you need tomorrow. The wealthy can be humble, and the humble can be wealthy in ways money cannot measure.
True love is not found in riches or beauty. It's found in sacrifice, consistency, and genuine care. Sheila didn't fall in love with Stanley's money, she fell in love with her character. And Stanley didn't fall in love with Sheila's beauty, he fell in love with her character. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Drop a comment below and tell us, have you ever judged someone only to discover they were different from what you thought? Let's talk in the comments.